Hello, good afternoon. This is Anna Amelia from Northeast Animal Rights. Today we are doing another one of our Saturday Spotlight interviews. We have Dina Aherne, who has given up her time today to talk to us. We're doing this in the interviews. We've looked at faiths and the direct links to veganism. Dina is a Hindu vegan, and she's also a high-profile activist. So I'd like to welcome Dina to today's interview. And also, we've got a list of questions to go through. If you're okay with that, we'll just start with them straight away.
Of course, yeah, no problem.
Okay, right. So first of all, how long have you been a practicing Hindu and a vegan? Which of these do you find harder to discuss with your friends and your family, and how do you deal with it?
Okay, so I'll just break that down. I was born a Hindu, so I come from a Hindu family, and born as a Hindu, and sort of raised as I say practicing Hindu, but I put that very mildly, because Hinduism in itself is not really sort of a dogmatic religion. It's more a way of life, and it's there's such a huge array of things that you can partake in or not partake in, and still very comfortably call yourself a Hindu. So yeah, I mean, I was raised as a Hindu, but sort of with a huge kind of, I would say, a spiritual emphasis, and I say that, and that's important for me to mention, because I think a lot of people mistake Hinduism as like say, for example, certain religions where you've got to do certain things to be able to call yourself that, whereas Hinduism's more sort of a spiritual way of life. So it's very flowy, it's very fluid. And then you asked how long have I been vegan as well?
Yeah. So
I've been vegan for, gosh, coming up to about 11 years now. Yeah, it was sort of towards around sort of 2010, 2009 that I chose to become vegan. It was a kind of a light switch moment for me, as to how I became vegan. It wasn't really a gradual thing. It was very much a light switch moment. And yeah, you asked me about what do I find harder in terms of communicating either of those two with friends and family. Well, I mean, living in the UK, I mean, it's such a multicultural country, and being a Hindu within the UK, it's just such a non-issue. You're amongst so many different faiths and cultures, and so if ever people have actually asked me about what my views are on Hinduism about certain topics, it's very comfortable to talk about that, because I just see people are very open to embrace new culture, and I think we're really fortunate to live in a country like that. Veganism, on the other hand, can be a difficult topic to broach. I would say, especially a few years ago, where, before veganism began to rise exponentially, it was still very much a sort of a cult topic, and you were sort of seen as the odd one out. So I would absolutely say that was the harder topic to broach with friends and family. What made it harder was when I decided to dedicate a lot of my activism towards raising awareness about the realities of dairy farming amongst the Hindu community, because what I sort of chose to do at that point was to bridge veganism and Hinduism together. That's a very, it's a sensitive topic as it is to talk to somebody about their lifestyle and their food choices, and then you're bringing their sort of religious, spiritual views into it. So that was definitely more difficult, but I must add, it has over the years gotten much easier, as I found more and more Hindus are opening up to veganism, sort of tapping into their innate compassionate sides, which everybody has, and so it's become a lot more easier to talk about veganism now.
Yeah, it's interesting when you were saying that veganism was harder, because I actually find, as a Christian vegan, the Christianity part is harder to talk about. Okay. It's kind of like almost people accept that I'm a vegan now, because obviously I'm quite vocal and active being a vegan, but but the Christianity part was like, oh, you're vegan and you're Christian, rather than the other way around, you know. So
Right,
it's interesting
right.
to hear the other way around with you.
Yeah, I think what I found was once I started to talk about some really important tenets of Hinduism, for example, ahimsa being one of them, which means non-violence, compassion being, you know, an important facet of the Hindu scriptures. You know, when I started to bring those sorts of things into the dialogue, when I was talking about veganism, somebody who was you know, somebody who didn't automatically have their defenses up anyway, and who were actually willing to listen, to learn, to engage, they would automatically make the link. I mean, it was just, you know, it was so black and white. You know, if you're talking about compassion and ahimsa, which Hinduism is all about in abundance, and then you talk about the terrible farming practices in the modern day farming industries, you know, how can you not see the link? And it was just a no-brainer. So, you know, that's what I found anyway. And then of course it's a generational thing as well, so it depends what generation you're talking to as well. You know, I dedicate a lot of my time to talking to the younger generation, because I feel that they can then you know, relay this message to their parents and their grandparents, because, you know, it comes from them. So if we can sort of educate the younger generation, they're our hope for a vegan future.
Yeah. So me and my husband are both, we're both Christian vegans, and we have this conflict of going to our church, knowing that those in the church and the congregation will mostly go back to a roast dinner, you know, consisting of a dead animal. So we try to be good role models, take it in good humour, answer questions, provide facts. And obviously pre-COVID, we could do things like take vegan food in and everything. We can't do that now. So how do you're talking about promoting veganism in your faith by talking to the younger age groups? I think that's a really, really good way. I mean, we don't have, in our church, our age group tends to be sort of like my age up over rather than down over. So it is harder to reach the generational sort of issue with veganism.
I mean, I think there's a difference here between, say, going to the temples, where you're not really going to be able to engage with the younger generation, because there does seem to be a disparity between who goes to the temples and who doesn't. So going to the temples and trying to educate them from a temple level, then you are dealing with priests and community members and you know, members of the public who are, like you said, you know, of the sort of older generation, and they're harder to tap into. So there it's more about sort of presenting the facts and then really allowing them to come to their own decisions. But what I found was really useful, and I've got to say I was fortunate that I had quite a lot of support from some very big sort of Hindu organizations in the UK, where they provided me with the platform to speak about veganism and Hinduism. And these platforms don't come from a sort of strict religious point of view. They come from what we call a dharmic point of view. I don't know if you've ever heard of the term dharma, but it's basically, it's an important term. It's well known in Hinduism, it's well known in Buddhism, and it's a difficult term to define, but what I suppose it means is sort of the path of sustenance, the path of truth, the path of sort of following what's right. And these platforms that gave me this opportunity to talk to a really wide audience about veganism and Hinduism, the people who were engaged on these platforms were the younger generation. So, you know, that I was really fortunate there. So one of the things that I do, because I mean, I'm not a regular temple goer at all. And again, that's part of my practice of Hinduism, that, you know, I believe that you can go anywhere and, you know, sort of have your connection to source, God, or whatever you want to call him, her, it. But, you know, for me, it was sort of engaging with the younger generation through these sorts of platforms, and raising awareness, educating them from a really compassionate sort of a compassionate sort of point of view, but also really just sort of trying to present the facts to them, and then trusting them that they all have sorry, I've just got a little link that came up, it's gone now, and that they have their moral compass, and their moral compass is working, and hoping that their moral compass is working enough to be able to guide them towards veganism. And in fact, I mean, this is an interesting conversation we're having, because just yesterday I met one of the organizers of one of these platforms. And one of the things that I have been doing, every year we have a festival once a year where hundreds and thousands of Hindus all over the world will offer milk to one of our gods, Lord Shiva. On Mondays generally is Lord Shiva Day, but there's one festival that happens once a year where they offer milk to Lord Shiva. And I've been trying for years and years to educate the Hindu community that it's such a waste that this milk is just going to going down the drain, literally. But also, this milk is coming from the suffering of another being, which actually just goes absolutely against everything that a Hindu believes in. And then you're offering that to this God that you believe in. And anyway, I found out yesterday that on the last festival, the last one that just went, from all the temples in the UK, without the temples initiating this at all, so many people who went there to offer milk were offering small amounts of soya milk rather than dairy. Wow. And I mean, that's massive. And I was so pleased when I heard that, not only are they now acknowledging that dairy farming is so cruel, but they're also acknowledging that it's a waste as well, and that all these practices are based on symbolism. They're symbolic. They're based on intention. We don't have to offer gallons and gallons of the product that you think we have to offer. The more you offer, the more blessings you get. It doesn't work that way. You can offer nothing and still get the same blessings, because it's all based on your intentions. And it was amazing. It was great. I was really happy to see that, the message is going through, and people are changing.
Yeah. You were actually talking about the dairy sort of industry and the cows. I know that they're seen as cows are seen as sacred within the faith, and are seen as the motherly animal, of high value, sort of non-financial value. So why does this not extend to pigs and other animals who are equally motherly with their young?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question, and a really important question to actually ask. I think one of the reasons that the cow is symbolized in this way, with such high regard as a mother, as the nurturer, is because a few of our important sacred textbooks refer to the cow. Now, the one thing I must say is, before I actually decided to become an activist and sort of enter the Hindu sphere, like I said to you at the beginning, I was born a Hindu, but I put that mildly. Like, my parents, we didn't go to the temple all the time. They didn't sit me down and read these sacred texts to me. There was none of that. They just passed on the knowledge to me that they had learned from their parents, and it went on and on. And so, I don't come from a highly religious family at all. And so when I decided that I wanted to sort of focus my efforts on the Hindu community, I thought, well, I can't just go in there and talk to these scholars, these academics, these people who are going to really challenge me. I can't just do that without actually doing some research myself, without actually, sort of learning something myself. And so I was really fortunate that two world Vedic scholars, they are well versed in the Hindu scriptures. All they've been doing all their life is learning about the Hindu scriptures. Two of them, one based in Switzerland, one based in India, sort of took me under their wing, resonated absolutely wholeheartedly with the vegan message, are vegan themselves. And I explained what I wanted to do, and they took me under their wing, and they basically started sharing with me what these scriptures actually say. What do they actually mean? And so much I found, so much of the interpretation that we have of these Hindu ancient scriptures is based on not sort of fully knowing the intentional message. And what I found was a lot of the Hindu scriptures, probably like a lot of scriptures out there, the Hindu scriptures especially, is based on symbolism. It's based on metaphors. It's based on beautiful poetry. Now, what's happened over time is you only have a small number of Hindu scholars who know this information, but the majority of people are like like my parents and like, you know, the Hindu family living next door. They're not Vedic scholars. They're your everyday person who have learned the things from their own parents and their grandparents.
Yeah.
So what they've learned is the cow's sacred, but we don't really know about other animals. But what I found was the cow isn't sacred per se as the cow. The cow is symbolic for the earth. The cow is symbolic for the clouds. The cow is symbolic for the rain. The cow is symbolic for Mother Nature. So the cow was utilized in this way to describe all these other parts of nature. Now, with regards to pigs and other animals, Hinduism has a lot of gods. Many gods, millions of other gods, and a lot of these gods will be associated with other animals. So we have a female goddess who's associated with the tiger. We have an elephant god who's associated with mice. You know, so we have another god who's associated with lions. So we have lots of gods who are associated with lots of other animals. So firstly, all these other animals are just as important because they're depicted within the illustrations of these other Hindu gods. And the other thing I must mention is that they carry just the same importance as the cow, because if you actually dissect the Hindu scriptures, the one thing that is constantly mentioned within all the different texts is that we must value every single being. And that doesn't just relate to the cow, and it doesn't just relate to human beings. It means every single being, that every single being deserves respect and kindness. So it actually, you know, Hinduism extends, you know, the message to every animal, to every human and non-human animal. But it's just that the cow has been focused on because the cow has been used in the metaphors and the similes and the poetry to describe a much larger picture.
Yeah. That's I mean, there's quite a lot of what you were saying that resonates with me, because we do get a lot of people who, when we're doing outreach, when we do stalls, I mean, I know we can't do them at the moment, but you do have people who come along and say, you know, that God gave us, you know, the kind of professing to be Christians, God gave us animals to eat, God put animals on earth for us to eat, and then they'll come back and say, well, we say, well, where does it say that in the Bible? And it doesn't, I mean, you can literally, I would say the Bible is quite a conflicted document. It's obviously it's written with you know, over thousands and thousands of years by lots and lots of people. It's not like one person like writing the same thing. And you can kind of like say, you can use this passage and then there's another passage which directly contradicts it, you know. So to me, it's about looking for the underlying message right across it, which is what you're saying. I mean, essentially, it's about all faiths should be, to me, about peace and love. And if they're not about peace and love, they're not a faith. It's not like there's nothing really for you to. You're not going to improve yourself by sort of following these, sort of, you know, reading these scriptures or reading these Bible passages. So to me, it's about improving yourself, improving the world, improving things for other people and for animals as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that you just mentioned there, when you're doing your outreach and people challenge you with, well, you know, in the Bible, it apparently says that, you know, animals were there for us to eat. Well, you know, on the same line, there's a very similar argument that's made by certain Hindus who, unfortunately, you know, again, don't understand the full meaning of some of these sacred texts. And they use Lord Krishna, who was the cowherder, you know, the apparent lover of butter and milk, and they use him as the reason as to why it, you know, it justifies for them to continue consuming and using dairy in this day and age. And you see, what they don't understand, and I always put this argument in two ways. What they don't seem to understand is, okay, let's just say Lord Krishna did consume butter. Let's just say Lord Krishna did consume milk. Okay, let's just go with that argument for the argument's sake, that he was a lover and consumer of dairy products. Okay, well, when Lord Krishna existed, he had a herd of cows in his literally on the footstep of his home, whom he tended to lovingly himself. He took to the best grazing spots himself. He played the flute lovingly to them. He milked them by hand.
Yeah.
Now, where do you get your milk from?
Yeah.
Do you have a herd of cows in your back garden that you wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and milk by hand, or do you go to your local Tesco's and pick up the red top, green top, or blue top? The other part of that, and I say that in jest, of course, right? And they always kind of snigger there. But the true part of it, I believe, in my interpretation, is that There's nowhere that says in the scriptures that he used to consume any of these products. Again, it's all based on poetry and simile. You know, when you read a story about Lord Krishna taking the butter and, you know, sort of teasing his friends that he's got all this butter, it's to show the playful side of life. It's to show that we shouldn't take life too seriously. It's not to say that you literally, because Lord Krishna consumed butter, you literally can consume butter as well. None of these scriptures were there to be taken literally at all. And what happens is people cherry pick these scriptures, take them literally, which basically means they don't have to change, because one of the hardest things is to change. And, you know, it's hard to change your daily habits, which is, you know, what you eat every day. So,
this
you know,
what you've just said there actually came out in a conversation with Doug Moore, who I interviewed a couple of weeks ago. He said the same thing, that you know, we get people saying, you know, Jesus ate fish. And I was actually convinced that at some point, somewhere in the Bible, it actually said that. But Doug said, if you have a look through the Bible, it doesn't say that anyway at all. You know, we're talking about the feeding of the 5,000. It doesn't actually say he ate fish. It doesn't even say that he gave fish out at all. So it is all about symbolism. It's about sharing your food with people. It's not about killing fish and, you know, you know, so, but again, he also said what you've just said, which is, you know, this is 2,000 years ago. Things have changed then. You know, you had like a couple of cows outside your own house, sort of like looking after them, properly looking after them. You're appreciating them. You're not factory farming them. You're not taking the slaughter, you know. And he said something similar like that. We're not walking around wearing sandals and having our hair long because that's how Jesus would have worn it, you know. So it is, times have changed, but people still cherry pick exactly what you've said. They cherry pick the things they know about without actually knowing the context of it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So one of the things I want, you have to excuse my pronunciation on this one, but obviously most faiths have something which is kind of like a big event or something where animals tend to be sacrificed or used. We obviously have Christmas, where turkeys has never been part of Christianity. It's never been mentioned in the Bible at all, but obviously now it's a big part of Christmas. And I know there's sorry, I've just sorry, I just cut the video off there. The Gadhimi festival.
Yeah, the Gadhimai festival.
Gadhimai festival, right? Yeah. Now that seems to be like a recent thing rather than like something which has happened for like hundreds and hundreds of years. So I know this is kind of to do with like a single sacrifice, but it seems to have expanded into like the mass. It's almost like sort of hysterical killing of all these animals in a horrendous way. So how do you think that a religion, obviously I'm talking about my religion as well, essentially built on peace and love, how can they justify that as part of their religion?
Yeah, I mean, so just to provide the viewers just a little bit of context with this particular festival, I mean, it's one of the worst bloodsheds that happens once every 5 years, and it goes over 2 days. Now it's a festival that came about, I think, hundreds of years ago. It was at a time when apparently a person had a dream, and he had a dream of this particular god who came to him and said, look, I will remove all the shackles of your worries if you build a temple in my name. And so he did, and once he had built that temple and realized that his worries were lifted, he sacrificed an animal to give thanks. Now, I mean, we're talking hundreds of years ago here, maybe even thousands of years ago. I mean, this is mythology we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Now, one of the things about animal sacrifice is, and some may argue that, you know, in certain Hindu texts, animal sacrifice is mentioned. And if it has been mentioned, it's been mentioned at a time, and we're talking again thousands of years ago when these texts were written, that you were sort of, you know, sacrificing something of yourself to give thanks. Now, a lot of people farmed at the time. You know, we come from an agrarian society, and so what was really valuable to you at the time would have been animals, would have been crops. And so what do you give in thanks and gratitude to the gods is something that's valuable to you. Now, the majority of Hindu society evolved over time. And instead of sacrificing animals, because they obviously saw how abhorrent that was and how much it went against the practice of ahimsa, which is non-violence, they would offer things like coconuts. You would crack open a coconut to give thanks. However, this particular festival has continued to run because of a small sect of Hindu who have insisted that it must carry on because of its sort of spiritual relevance. India actually, and it's important, I don't know if people know this generally, but India banned all animal sacrifices in 2015. So this festival actually takes place just outside India on the borders of Nepal. And whilst, you know, a lot of Indians from India will travel to the festival, there's a much larger group of people who are absolutely against it. And even the Nepalese government is against it. Because, as you said, it fundamentally goes against the facets of compassion and ahimsa. And in my view, and I say in their view too, it is based on a huge misunderstanding and a huge misconception of what the story of, you know, build a temple and, you know, and him sacrificing something that's valuable. It's based on a huge misconception. You know, it's all about give something of yourself, give up your ego, work on your ego, work on your greed, you know, for you to find yourself, for you to become closer to oneness, for you to become closer to God. You know, you've got to give up those parts of yourself that are keeping you attached to the material world. It doesn't literally mean grab a rat, grab a chicken, grab a goat, grab a buffalo, let's sacrifice. But unfortunately, you know, some people are still very much wed to that, the purest interpretation of that story, rather than actually drawing out the symbolism of it. I mean, I know myself, I know a lot of activists in India who work tirelessly. Whenever this festival is about to happen, they work tirelessly to, you know, try to sort of avert the festival, to try to stop the festival, and those works continue. I'm just thankful that it doesn't happen every year and it's every 5 years. But, you know, and as each 5 years goes on, less and less animals are being sacrificed. So we're moving towards the right way. Is it going to happen overnight? No, it isn't, because people generally don't change overnight, especially, you know, large institutions of people. But it absolutely goes against everything Hinduism stands for.
Yeah, I think all faiths have that sort of element of like utter hypocrisy, where you have people saying, I'm a Christian, I'm doing this, I'm doing the other. But actually, when you look at how they live in their life, it's completely different to what they should be doing. Like I said, Christianity with the, you know, the Christmas ones, the Easter festivals. Easter obviously is quite a big festival for us. But again, Easter, you're talking about sacrificing lambs, sacrificing chickens, and there's no sort of like forethought given at any sort of like other kind of like, they're not really thinking about what they're actually doing. It's kind of like, we've celebrated Christ's being sort of like dying and then being resurrected. So what we'll do is we'll go home now and kill a lamb, or eat a lamb which has been killed for us. There's literally no connection at all.
It's not there at all.
Yeah. So I feel the frustration. I'm sharing it. So what type of activism appeals to you the most, and what do you think is the most effective? Because obviously we are doing, with us sort of like being stuck at the moment, we're kind of concentrating a lot on social media and doing live stream events and interviews and things like that, rather than actually going out in the street, which we love, but we can't do that now. So what do you sort of like enjoy doing?
I really, you know, when I first started as an activist, I kind of started doing everything. You know, I would do the on-street activism, I would do the leafleting, I would do the sort of, you know, the being the keyboard warrior and filling out petitions. You know, I would do the public speaking. I literally did a bit, you know, obviously I run Leicestershire Animal Save as well. So, you know, going to the slaughterhouses. And then what I found was, firstly, I can't do everything. Because it's emotionally taxing and physically draining. And I sort of honed in on public speaking and sort of traveling the country and giving my public talks on, you know, topics like the realities of dairy, the realities of the meat industry, yoga and veganism, you know, and sort of talking about topics such as that, where I can, I suppose, utilize my skills of public speaking, my legal skills of persuasion, you know, my sort of academic skills of relaying complex information in an easy to understand way. And I think I really enjoy that, because obviously that, you know, that's what I'm used to. That's what I, you know, as a lawyer, that's what I did, go into court, standing in front of the judge. As an academic, teaching students, that's what I do. And so being able to sort of talk about a topic that I care about so much, and I'm so passionate about, animal rights, and to be able to talk about that, for me personally is very effective. Which is the most effective? I don't think there is just one. You know, we need all of us. We need all of us. We need those who, you know, in the middle of the night will go and help animals who are about to be, you know, slaughtered. We need those who are on the streets talking to members of the public. We need those who are public speaking. We need those who are interviewing people, you know, behind a laptop. We need every single facet of activism, because it appeals to everyone. We've got to appeal to absolutely everyone. You know, we've got to sort of put our tentacles out there and say, right, you know, we've got to try and grab hold of everyone's attention in whichever way we can.
I think one of the things, you know, people say, you know, I can't do activism. I wouldn't know what to do. And I've said to them, you know, we say to them in our group, well, you've got skills, you've got certain experience. I mean, I worked in a secondary school for a long time, so I've got an educational background. And I'm very happy talking to people on the street and sort of, you know, and doing this sort of thing. But other people have got different sort of skills, and some people are really good at creating petitions. People are really good at creating, you know, like setting up meetings and doing research and everything. So I think all these little things, it's like you said, that everything, it makes a difference. And if everybody was just doing one thing, people would start to switch off, because I think people are attracted by different things. I mean, we don't use anything graphic. I mean, we do have sort of graphic materials from like Animal Aid and stuff on our table, but they all have the little sign on saying it's graphic material. So we don't actually go and say, look at this graphic footage, anything, you know. But I know that's how I converted. When I was vegetarian, converting to vegan, it was actually the graphic footage which got me. It was literally, like you said, it was like a light bulb moment. I saw it and I switched and I thought, I can't go back. So some people do that, and then other people, it's a much slower approach. So you kind of, you know, you're getting a leaflet, you're kind of like looking at it, you're doing your own research. So I think you're right. It's all the different sorts of angles, the different facets of activism that all go together to help the animals.
Yeah, absolutely. We need all of them. I mean, I always put it akin to, you know, the discs on our spine. You know, you remove one and you know you're going to have a slip disc and you're going to have intense back pain. You need all of them to make the back work. And it's that, you know, it's the same with activism. You need all of those facets to you know, make any form of social change, which is what we're trying to do. So
that's a very good way of putting it. I'll remember that. I'll use that.
Well, I like my analogies.
So, you know, one of the things we talk about in activism is mental health, and obviously lockdown has caused a lot of people loads of mental health issues, and obviously people have had to look at different ways of advocating for animals because they can't go out on, you know, on the streets and leaflet as they normally would. So have you been able to come up with any creative ways of advocating for animals, and how have you been coping with lockdown and looking after your own mental health?
I'll take the second part of that question first, actually. I've personally been sort of secretly pleased about lockdown, because it's meant that I've been forced to sort of slow down, take stock of my life, what's going on. I have a little boy as well who's, you know, he's only 20 months old. So when lockdown happened, obviously he was younger. So it actually just meant that I was really able to dedicate some really good quality time towards him. And so I was secretly pleased about lockdown. On the other hand, yes, of course, you know, I've seen people who have, you know, who have and who are suffering from mental health because of it. And of course, it's kind of put a bit of a standstill on activism. I mean, what I found through sort of, you know, being part of Leicester Animal Rights and Leicestershire Animal Save is, you know, we're just finding more novel ways to sort of get the message out there. Yes, a lot of it is done online. You know, prior to the 6 people gathering, you know, we were still able to go out and do sort of events in the town centres whilst we were sort of socially distancing ourselves. And even with the 6 people, you know, a restriction, we still fall within one of the political exemptions. So even as long as we, you know, complete the necessary forms on sort of risk assessment, you know, there's nothing to say, you know, there's nowhere that says that we can't do that. The one thing we haven't done is any vigil since lockdown, and that's just because the people who generally partake in the vigils have just been uncomfortable coming together whilst, you know, this is all happening, which is absolutely fine. The one thing we did start to do is we started regular sort of every Sunday afternoon, just sort of Zoom calls, you know, people join in, and you know, it was an opportunity for people just to just to share what they're doing, just to talk about their day, or to actually just vent their frustrations, just a platform to be amongst like-minded individuals. So that was something that we were doing as well. That slowed down recently, but that was really sort of doing well when it was happening. So I think, you know, it's sort of just finding novel ways to feel connected. And I think people miss that connection. People miss that connection, especially people who go home to a family who are not vegan. Because then the vegan activists do become their kind of quasi family. And when lockdown happened, that was suddenly taken away from them. And I really feel for those people. And I think this is where platforms such as Zoom and Microsoft Teams and Skype calls and all that really just come into their own, because that's where we can really utilize, you know, this amazing technology to get connected again.
We find, I mean, you'll find it yourself. I mean, obviously you build up like a kind of, you know, like a camaraderie between activists when everybody's looking out for each other. And if you have a bad day, everybody kind of like supports you after the event. We would always go to a place called Supernatural in Newcastle, which is a big restaurant. And we all sort of sit there, have vegan food and vent or offload or ask, how would you have done that? How would you have answered this question, sort of thing? And obviously we don't have that now. So we are setting up the, we're having like an afternoon catch up at the time we would have done the outreach. So we're kind of doing the live stream outreach so people can see what we would have been talking about. And then we are all catching up afterwards so we can talk about it and just catch up. Because I do feel as if I miss them, you know, because they're all like the vegan family. It's kind of like people who you know you're instantly comfortable with, you know. It's really, really important.
Yeah, to share that mindset, you know, it's your tribe, isn't it? It's to have your tribe. So it's a great idea.
It's been absolutely fascinating talking to you today, Dina. Thank you very much for giving up your time. It is really, really appreciated.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. I know you're going to have to go and pick up your son now as well. So I'll let you go. So I'll say thank you very much, Dina Aherne, from Anna Amelia at Northeast Animal Rights. Signing off for now. Okay, thank you very much.